Good morning and welcome to this course from Humanity, which is all about how people in the environmental education space can use artificial intelligence to better promote and advertise and engage their audience using AI. My name is Lee Mallon and I will kind of guide you through this process over the next 10 different modules. Now, this course is very condensed. It's very much an introductory course. It assumes no prior technical abilities, and most of the tools we are going to use are either free for a set amount of usage or cost under $10 for you to try. Now, let's get started to explain what this course will cover. Through this program, the intention is to kind of hit these 10 particular modules. The modules should cover all aspects of storytelling, particularly using AI. So first of all, I'll just give you an introduction about myself and kind of how we got here. Then we'll lead on to module 2, which is around framing the world. That is how climate action or just general education action always resolves around fear. And there is a potential avenue to flip the switch and make it more around inspiration for certain situations. And with artificial intelligence, we're able to do this very well. Then in chapter 3, module 3, we will go into a bit of AI fundamentals, where just kind of explain to you what artificial intelligence is, and more importantly, a lot of the buzzwords and kind of demystify them so you're aware of what people are talking about when they throw out certain key phrases. Then we're going to go into the creation aspect. So in module 4, we're going to talk to our information, and what this means is grabbing PDFs, reports, documents, Excel spreadsheets, etc., and feeding them into AI so that we can communicate with that information using natural language, which is the thing that the majority of us are able to do. Then we're going to start generating text in many different form factors. Then we're going to move on to the visual aspect, where we can generate imagery by describing what we want or providing other images to then use that as a base, and really hone into people who think in that visual kind of fashion. After we've done images, we're then going to go into sound, but not just music. We're going to do music, sound effects, and also narration through speech, and how powerful that can be for your messaging. And then we're going to wrap all this stuff by turning all these things and putting them all together and constructing a video. Then in the 9th module, we're going to touch on how you can use artificial intelligence, how you can make these inspirational pieces of content maybe more interactive. Because what we're going to do in module 9 is show you how you can do the same type of things that someone who can code software, and you can do it all with natural language. And then we'll finish off in module 10, where we'll just wrap things up. Because what I'm going to show you today is basically the kind of cutting edge of what is available right now. And this thing is moving very fast. So just to give you a heads up about what is around the corner. So my name is Lee Mallon. I ran a digital innovation and software agency in the UK for about 10 years. Then I decided to travel around the world with my wife and 2 children. And now we are based in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, which is, in my opinion, the home and the growth area of artificial intelligence in the world. The thesis I have around where artificial intelligence is going is kind of summarized in this book I wrote called DKR. If you would like a complimentary copy, there is a link and a QR code in module 10. I kind of want to pose to you an interesting question, which is, why now? Why should you be embracing AI? Why is AI stuck on this monumentous kind of shift and hype within both the technical community and also the wider kind of mainstream media? And the main reason is there's been this breakthrough, which we'll dive into a bit more details in the AI fundamentals chapter, where for the very first time, the AI is now using how we communicate as its default mechanic. And what I mean by that is we have used things like, keyboards and mouse and screens and touch and swipes to compromise how we communicate with others through voice, through language. And we've basically put up this kind of like interface through these peripherals to get technology to do what we want. But the reality is now we don't need to do this. We can now almost 100% communicate with technology through natural language and both get a humanistic response, but also have that natural language turned into interesting and amazing things with limited technical skills and background. I want to give you an example. So, of course, I'm technical, and this will be very much out of the current capabilities of many of you watching, but just to give you a frame of where this stuff is going. So, as I mentioned, I traveled with my family, and one aspect of travel was that we found it very difficult to find, activities for children in cities as we went around the world. So I created basically a review TripAdvisor for children using artificial intelligence. Now, it's a completely fake website that I did in a weekend, but it basically gives you a list of 234 countries, capital cities around the world, and then for each capital city, it has 10 children's activities, and for each activity, it has a 1,000-word review, synopsis of what that activity is, and then even has some reviews that have been AI generated. And the reason I'm telling you this is because though I am technical, this website, which comprised of 2,607 pages, probably a similar 3,000-ish images, 450 fake AI generated reviews. It took me 15 hours to create, and it cost me in just compute, in generating mainly the images and the text, about $53. And the reason I tell you this is for two things. One, it just shows how accessible this technology is becoming, how people like me who are very technical can create this stuff in a very small amount of time and for a very low cost. But that will trickle through the iterative steps and get to people who are not technical. And I estimate by the end of the year, someone with no technical skills would be able to create the same thing within the same time period, probably for less cost. And the reason that this is so powerful and so interesting is because to be able to say, here is a TripAdvisor for children, here's a TripAdvisor that's been completely generated, all the images of the cities, of the activities were all created, it's because showing people stuff, giving them a visual representation of it, is typically a lot more powerful than a 100-page report that only those who already believe will read. So for me, the reason for this course, the reason why I hope you're watching it or you get some value from it, is because I think that we can better story tell using artificial intelligence. We can give domain experts and people passionate about problems access to the technology to do some very interesting things. And I just want to show you that by the end of this course, you're going to be able to create a video like what I'm about to show you. And just to frame it, this video is 100% AI generated. It's got some human editing in, but all the text, all the video, all the music, all the narration was all generated by AI.
Imagine a future where we promote climate action not out of fear, but through inspiration. What if our future cities became beacons of clean, renewable energy rather than decaying landscapes beyond our help? Today, we introduce City 2047. Witness firsthand what capital cities from around the world will look like, driven by fear, but also by inspiration. See what Rome, Mexico, or Singapore might look like in 2047. Find your city and discover whether it is fear or inspiration that motivates you to embrace change.
So as you can see there, that is a very compelling and engaging story. And that only took me maybe an hour and a half to put together with no need of any additional media people. And this is what I hope you'll be able to create by the end of this course. So that is it for our introductory episode. The plan is now we'll move on to module 2, which is around framing the world. I hope you enjoy the course. Any feedback, any comments, please let me know. Thank you. Good morning and welcome to Module 2 of the Humanity AI course for environmental educators. My name is Lee Mallon and I will be your host, your guide through this program. Now, today's course, we are going to talk about framing the world. Now, the reason why this is important is unfortunately, we have to kind of accept as environmental educators, we are looking to change opinion. Like our objective is to change people's mind. Those who believe in your cause, who would like to provide action, are already converted, and we're trying to change the mind of others, either those in power, those in our community, whoever it may be. But we'll get to that shortly. Now, there has been a growing narrative within, let's just say, climate action, for example, of the world is over. Everything is wrong. Everything is destroyed. It's all doom and gloom. There's nothing we can do. Now, personally, I find that a problem because if everything is all doom and gloom, then what's the point in action? I personally much prefer and react better to an inspirational message. However, other people respond to a fear message. And it's not to say that we should pick one or the other necessarily. It's just being aware that both are sometimes needed. Because the reality is both fear and inspiration can work depending on the objective of you and your time horizon. There's this great quote from a gentleman from the UK called Lee Groombridge. He's an expert in human behavior. And I'm not going to read out the quote. You can see it on the screen, obviously. But basically what it says is that fear is a great motivator for immediate action. If you want someone to do something in a very short time horizon, then fear is a great motivator. Fear over a 20, 30-year horizon just doesn't work. You have to give people something to go towards to inspire them for change. Like there has to be a win. You can tell people that we shouldn't use fossil fuels, otherwise everything's going to go bad. Or you can say by using clean energy, abundant energy, then our compute will be free, and therefore we can have more compute and we can do more interesting things. Our parks will have cleaner air, whatever the thing may be. We have to be thinking towards. And to do that, we have to tell stories better. I have been passionate generally about environmental education for a long time, but only in kind of the recent years have I got more kind of involved. And it is an area that is massively underfunded. And it's full of people who have a domain expertise in what they do, and they are typically not great marketers to sell the story of what their cause is and how it has the ability to change. And that's largely because you're also playing against the addiction of things like TikTok or Instagram or whatever the news of the day may be. So we have to change the narrative. And one of the big parts of that is by not making raw data boring. If you are someone who collects water samples because you're causes around river quality, if it's something around air quality or temperature or protections of certain animal species, you collect these data points, which are immensely valuable for both tracking progress and also for providing empirical evidence that these things are being changed. The problem, though, is that data is boring and it doesn't gain the attention of potentially the people in power or the wider community who you're looking to educate and hopefully back your cause. And there's some great ways that this can be changed. For example, if we think of river quality in the UK, there's a great initiative called Freshwater Watch, and people can submit their data, their boring data, and then that data can be represented in things like graphs or in maps and color-coded. And that is a much better representation to show you, the degradation of water quality in the UK. Now, the problem even with that, though, is, it's not interactive. If I'm, based in the north of Wales, like, what does that mean to me? And if my water's clean, that doesn't tell me a story of how the water upstream on 3 rivers up, if that decays more, it's eventually going to affect me, for example. So we have to look at this and think, like, whose mind are we trying to change? What is our audience profile? Who are these individuals and what are their motivations? Whose attention are we trying to gain? Because all of these media companies, all of these brands around the world have used social, have used content to get your attention. Now, normally it's so that you buy a trainer or a bag from one brand instead of another brand. What if actually that money they decided to then invest in promoting a cause or donating to an activity because the messaging was so compelling? And to do this, we have to kind of think, right, we have our data. So for example, here's a snapshot. This is data around sewage discharge in the River Thames. And we can take that data and we can generate the graph that I showed, the map I showed you, or we can generate graphs. And that's great if that's the target audience. But what if the actual target audience was, you don't want children swimming in the river? Showing them graphs and showing them maps is not massively going to help them. What would potentially help them is a children's book. And what if that children's book was made up of pictures and it had a story arc around how healthy rivers and clean rivers provide a much needed part of the community and something for them to play, something for them to do. And if that story could encumber the names of bad rivers that are near them, or from the data is showing that there is sewerage or pollution in the waterway, then this is something that becomes engaging to that audience. And through that, we can invoke a much greater change. And I just want to show you a little video of this storybook that was generated again in about 35, 40 minutes using AI.
The Thames Water Adventure, a tale of rivers. In the cleaner parts of the Thames, Sammy the Swan swims joyfully. But he wonders about the health of other rivers. Sammy learns about recent discharges in rivers like Stand Lake, affecting their water quality. Felix the fish from the River Wye and Toby the toad from the river team visit Sammy. They discuss the differences in their rivers. Wendy the wise otter shares insights. While the Wye and Temi are clean, rivers like Winterbourne and Cullum face challenges. Curious, they explore the River Leam and River Wharfe, seeing efforts to maintain their health. Returning to the Thames, they educate others. Look at Pangbourne, says Sammy. We can improve our river too. Inspired, local children start a campaign for a healthier Thames, addressing issues like those in Isle of Dogs, London. Thanks to everyone's efforts, even the troubled parts of the Thames start to recover. We made a difference, cheers Toby. Every river from the Wye to the Thames deserves care. Let's protect our waterways. Sammy, Felix, and Toby continue their adventures, now in cleaner waters, sharing their stories of transformation. The end.
So as you can see from that video, there's a much engaging message for a youth audience, and that is the thing we have to remember. That artificial intelligence gives us the control, it gives us the accessibility to create anything. That video, which very much focused on the Thames, you could take that, we'll kind of go into it in later modules, but you can kind of take that script, you can take them prompts for the different tools, for narration, for video clips, for images, and you could grab the data from your local river and generate a similar story based on the water quality where you are. But it would adapt, the images would change, the narrative would change based on if your river's good or if they're bad, and why they potentially are good and bad as well. That is the importance to me of framing. We need to make sure we're not just doom scrolling and throwing out negativity around our action. There is also potentially an inspirational message that can come through of what things can be, not to discount fear by any means, but knowing where that can be used. Because you've got to remember, like, we don't have to scare people now. We have the technology, we have the ability to share and to promote a potential inspirational message as well. The next module we're going to be working on is AI fundamentals. If you're not familiar with artificial intelligence, this is probably one to grab a coffee with. Good morning and welcome to Module 3 of the Humanity Environmental Educators AI course. My name is Lee Mallon and I'll be your host, your guide along this course. Today in this program, we're going to be learning our AI fundamentals. So this is just a bit of a primer to what artificial intelligence is, a lot of the buzzwords, and how we can use it in our desire to better storytell and educate on our course. Now, this particular module is split into 5 simple sections. I'm going to give you a bit of a history lesson, show you some terms, what's important, and then delve into generative AI, which is basically the main reason we're here, and how we can use this AI to generate things rather than predict things. And then I'll show you one example I did recently for COP28, and then we'll finish off with just some ethical points that we should bear in mind when we're creating and using this technology. So first up, the history. Technology, like anything, has been around, for most of the century. Artificial intelligence took a massive uptick, or machine learning, as it became known. Obviously, post-war, with the Enigma machine and code breaking. Obviously, a lot of stuff from the UK in particular. But it was only when we kind of hit the 90s and the 2010s, the last 30 years, that things really took a step up, because the AI industry, or the AI sector, tends to run with massive progress for 10 years and then 10 years of nothing, a nuclear kind of winter, and then 10 years of progress. And this is repeated over the last 60 years. But we're hitting a very delicate point now where in the 90s, we started to massively use compute. Everyone got computers and it became kind of commonplace. Then in the 2000s, after the kind of dot-com bust and the rise of Web 2, we started to move a lot of that stuff to the cloud, to centralized compute. And then obviously over the last 10 years, we've just all been giving our data to social media companies freely. And if you pull all these things together, the centralized compute in data centers, the massive rise of a thing called GPUs that started out in games consoles, and they've become an underpinning for training and using for inference in the AI world, through a massive, the leading company called NVIDIA in that space. And then if you add into that the fact that we now have centralized a lot of data through tagging photos, uploading, sharing our thoughts on Twitter, and etc. across all these social media companies, we've given these companies resources to train at such a large scale to potentially find patterns and value, etc. And now we both, I guess, are suffering from that decision, and also are now reaping the benefits with regards to having massively enhanced and more humanistic artificial intelligence. Now, you may or may not, this may be your first encounter of AI, this may be something that you've been looking into for a while, but there's a lot of terminology in the space, a lot of academic kind of references. But the key is, if you've seen these types of terms that I'm kind of showing on the screen, don't worry too much. They are massively not important if you are looking to just use AI to enhance your workflow or to better storytell and create things. The key thing to remember is these 4 pieces, which is data, code, relationships, and decisions. So any AI model needs data. It needs something to base its assumptions on. And then once it has that data, it has some code, and that code basically interrogates the data and it finds relationships. It finds patterns between, say, numbers or between words. And then off the back of that, it then makes a decision. That decision may be, from the data you've given me, I'm 97% sure that this email is spam. Or it might be from the data you've trained me on, I'm now going to tell you or predict this next word in the sentence that you're trying to generate. That is pretty much the summarization of what a lot of these AI buzzwords kind of frame into. There's a few different types of learnings. The main ones are reinforcement, supervised, and unsupervised. Just to give you some context to what these mean is, if you imagine you play a computer game the very first time, the first few times you play it, you just die straight away. You're trying to understand the controls, you're trying to understand the levels, like avoid the fire, avoid the boulders, jump over the gaps. So you can give an AI model a computer game and it will do the same. It will play and it will learn and it will evolve because it's learning the same way you are. And you tell it, you say, look, if you fall down this hole, you're going to lose. You want the point score to go up, and then it will play over time, and it will play thousands, if not millions of hours in parallel. And off the back of that, it can then get better at the game. Supervised learning is where you basically have a model and you want to give it a load of data, and you're going to tell it already, this is spam, this is not spam. And then it will basically then predict the next email you give it. What's the likelihood that it's spam or not spam, for example. And then finally, unsupervised is where you just give it a load of data and you say, find patterns in this mess. This is particularly good for finding vulnerabilities in code, for example. Now, for a long time, AI models worked in what's called classification. So you have an algorithm, you have training data. So in this case, the training data is a load of pictures of cats and dogs. And then the model runs over that training data. Sorry, the algorithm runs over that training data and creates a model. That model then can be communicated to. So you can say, I have a picture. Please tell me if this is a cat or a dog. And it will return back and go, here's a dog, and I'm 70% sure. Or this is the cat, and I'm 0% sure, for example. And that's what a lot of models and a lot of machine learning was for a very, very long time. And so you could argue to this day is still the fundamental principle of what we're trying to do. Then came along these clever little speakers that we put in our houses called Alexa and Google and Siri. And they worked slightly differently because they used a principle called intent matching. They enabled software developers to bring applications, to build services on top. And they would say, we want to communicate to this through natural voice, but to do so and to do so effectively, you need to tell us all the types of ways people are going to talk to you. So for example, if you were making a shopping app, then you potentially would say, okay, cool, right? So Peter would like to buy 5 bananas, total price is this, is one way that person may request to buy something. And you would just tag and say, well, okay, so if they say Peter, that's someone's name. If they say 5, that's a quantity. If they say banana, it's a product. And if they say $4.34, then that's a price. And then you would just give the model 100 different variants of asking that same question. And then with a decent level of confidence, if you then asked, for example, I would like to buy 5 bananas for the total price of $2, it would be able to match it and know that you're trying to use this service, which is to purchase bananas, and then would route you accordingly, and the application would be able to understand. And that was good for simple things like turn off my lights, or turn off my lights in the living room, or buy me some batteries on Amazon, whatever it may be. But what we found is as people become more comfortable with using these speakers for controlling homes or music or buying simple things, we wanted more of it. We wanted to be able to interact with technology, with our computing in a much more humanistic way. We didn't necessarily want it to always be right, but we wanted it to not go, I don't know, or I can't understand you. We wanted it to be like us. And then, fortunately, we had this thing called generative AI kind of come along. Generative AI is the idea of generating the next word in a sentence. So you can say, write me a poem on X, and it will take that and it will use its relationships and its knowledge, and it will then basically predict the next word as you go, based on what it already knows and a few other factors. But just to give you an idea and to mirror the previous stuff is you have data. In the case of large language models, that data is a lot A lot of these models are typically trained, they typically read or consume most of the internet's written text, things like Wikipedia, news sites, Twitter, etc., all that type of stuff, to understand the nuances of language and the different form factors. Once it does that, it feeds this into the model, and it uses this transformer model to consume this information, to provide this level of understanding and the connections and relationships between words. And the reality is that we don't really know 100% how this works so well. All we know is the more information we give it, it seems to predict a much better outcome, though we might be hitting that ceiling on the volume of information provided. Now, that will basically give you a very good understanding across the general populace. If you just talk quite passively and openly and not really ask for too much, it'll work amazingly. You can then fine-tune that model within a narrow subset. So, for example, let's say you spoke to the model and said, please can you describe or write me a poem on distressed debt. Now it's going to see distress, it's going to see debt, and it's going to think of it as negative. It doesn't know that the distressed debt is a class of debt rather than something terrible. Now you can fine tune that model to understand what that product name is, what that terminology is, which is great. And you can also do it in the space of environmental education. You can teach it to understand things like climate. For example, there is now a climate LLM, which understands the terminologies within that space. You could do one for animal welfare or for terms around the different types of trees or ecological kind of terminologies that exist, just to really hone in the understanding of the words. And now, once you have that model, it has been fine-tuned or it has been had human reinforcement, like labeling added to it, you can then prompt, you can then talk to it through natural language. You can ask it questions, you can ask it to write things, and that is the crux of what this large language model thing is. And you're gonna hear a few key terms. The main ones are parameters and tokens. So parameters are basically, I love this example, which is if you imagine a camera, you're able to tweak like the brightest, the focal point, and by moving all these levers, or if you're on like your phone, by moving all these different things, you create the output of the images different depending on how you tweak these things. That is basically what represents these parameters. And then we have tokens, and tokens are the amounts of, let's just say syllables for argument's sake, the amounts of syllables that the model can understand at any one time. So you can give it 100,000 syllables, and that's, so you can say, here's a book of 50,000 syllables, please summarize it in 10,000 syllables, for example. And these are the two biggest kind of terms that you'll hear a lot within the large language model kind of world. Now, the applications for this are more and more each day becoming quite surreal and quite extensive. There's been examples of using these models for prediction. Google released a great one for weather forecasting, where they were able to take like 12-hour window to predict crazy weather patterns. We can use them obviously for creation. We've seen the image generation that's existed across social media in recent years, and also music is becoming quite a fast one. We can use it for identification. So, can you, is this person Lee? Is this person Dave? Is this person Sally, for example? And then optimization. Can we optimize the travel route of our vehicles by understanding, the traffic light system, or how many left turns there are, or whatever it may be? Artificial intelligence has a multitude of different applications across a spectrum of areas, and that's why there's so much hype and excitement about it. And I just want to share with you one example. So at the end of last year, 2023, I presented at COP28 in Dubai, and one of my presentations was on analyzing social media posts within conflict zones, and by monitoring the social media posts, because when there is a conflict, unfortunately, people post to social media to obviously shine a light on what's happening, and also as a way to communicate with friends and family. And can you basically use these images that are taken to track environmental damage over time. So for example, you can see here's a photo. Actually, if I show you in detail here, here's the original photo on the left. And then the second image in the middle is a segmentation model. So that's basically just identifying all the buildings or blocks of grass or trees. And then the image on the right is extracting away anything it doesn't deem to be natural in the environment. And then by doing so, we're able to then say at this GPS point, that's what this used to look like on the far left, on the far right. And then we take a picture in 6 months' time, and then we can see the degradation. And also potentially use that for a multitude of other things, for if we then know what, if there was a fire or if it was a missile, then understand how that land can be reused or repurposed in the future based on how it looks and how it's degraded over time. Now, all this is well and good and it's quite exciting, but it doesn't mean we can avoid the ethical question. So copyright plays a massive part in this. It's a massive debate as to, are these algorithms copying other people's works? Are they just consuming them the same way that if we look at paintings, it's going to, and then we decide to paint something, it's going to influence how we do things? That is still kind of up for debate. Like, personally, I kind of lean on the training side of things. Data governance, like if you are someone who doesn't want your information to be fed into these models, because if you're using certain products and services that are free, this stuff is very compute heavy. So they're monetizing it some way. So therefore you have to ask yourself, if I'm not paying for this, how are they making money? And therefore, do I want the secrets of my, water data or of my business or whatever, if we think just slightly outside of the environmental use cases at the moment? And then truth. Large language models in particular, they do this thing called hallucinate, which is where they'll just make stuff up. And it's not that they're lying, they're just trying, their reward mechanic is to please you, to give you something. So there is an element sometimes where you can't necessarily trust the results. There are ways to work around this through this idea called truth graphs and knowledge graphs that can kind of mitigate this, but it's just something that has to be bear in mind that if you're giving data about your cause and you want it to generate a script or a blog post or a report, you do need to fact check the results, because this is a creative engine, not something that's just pulling out raw facts and figures. And then finally, biased. All information has bias to some capacity. The internet obviously is no different. And we just have to remember that when building these systems, that there is bias in it. And again, human intervention to check. And then you kind of have to put your name on it and say, this is, I'll die by the sword on this if that's the way it goes, because I trust and I believe in it. But we'll expand into ethics as we get further on into the generation side of things. It gets quite interesting. So that's the end of module 3. Coming up next is module 4, where we're going to talk to our information. Have a lovely afternoon. Good morning, my name's Lee Mallon, and this is module 4 on the AI for Environmental Educators mini course. In this module, we're going to talk about talking to data and why that's so important, and also like how do we even go about it. So let's get started. So first of all, I just want to kind of cover a few bits of terminology that will be important. So the first is context window, then we'll lead into RAGs, analysis, and custom. Now, context window implies when you're talking to one of these large language models, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever it may be, there is only a certain amount of information you can send to it and get back from it within what is called the context window. If you want to send in 100 words and you want to then have a conversation with it, which is say 50 words, and then you want 200 words out, then you need to have a context window of 350 words. Now, context window is accessible in different models, and it ranges from 1,000 tokens. That's how it's defined. A token is a syllable of a word, but for this purpose, let's just say it's a word, 1,000 words, all the way up to Google recently released Gemini, its ChatGPT equivalent model, at 1 million words or 1 million tokens. Now, why this is important is if you use ChatGPT 3.5 today, you'll be working with roughly about 8,000 tokens. And it's important because if you send in a document or a bit of text you want to analyze, and then you want to output the equivalent size, you just need to be careful with this context window, because what will happen is it will basically condense the stuff you've sent in and maybe lose some of the context of the question. Now, the context window and why it's important is because of cost. That's the main thing. If you've got a Google system with 1 million tokens, I'm sure the answer should be, let's just all use that. Of course, there is more compute being actioned when that happens, and therefore the inference also can take a bit longer to execute, so you don't get your result back as immediate as you would with, say, a 8,000 token window. So these things are just something we have to balance out with these two things. Now, the reason, or not the reason, I guess, the byproduct of this, like with the beginning we had low context windows, and also then the cost prohibition of having like 1 million tokens. We don't want to be sending an 80-page document to the API every time we ask it a question. So this idea called RAGs came along. RAGs stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. And what it means is we want to send information to the language model that is the most relevant to the question we're asking, so that it doesn't have noise, and also it means we can shrink that context window. So what happens is, let's say you provide a 100-page document. Instead of it sending that 100-page document every time you ask a question, it will basically look at that document and split it up into chunks. Let's just say pages, so into 90 pages. And then if in that document, let's say 20 pages were about air quality, 20 pages were about climate action, and the remainder was around sewerage, and your question is around climate, then it will just go, right, I'm going to grab them 20 pages, and anytime there's a request, I'm just going to send them 20. Which then obviously massively reduces the compute by, let's just say, 1/5 on that information being processed. Now, RAGs is great. It is, in my opinion, a little bit of a hack, and hopefully it'll improve over time. But also, I think the context window and the inference problem will slowly go away. There's a great chipset like been announced, or there's been work done for a long time called Grok, and it's been able to infer inference executions by 10 times faster, and also at 1/10 the energy consumption, which is great for environmental needs. Now, let's just assume we've now got information, we can ask it questions. We now have this idea of analysis. Now, what I mean by this is these language models are very creative. Their reward mechanic in their code is to give you an answer. So you'll ask it a question, even if it doesn't know, it will come up with something. And sometimes it's quite convincing and believable. Now, if you want to ask it a question about something that is factually important or revolves around data, it's not like write a blog post or create a poem or something like this, then you want a bit of reassurance that the answer is going to be what you intended it to be. And this is where we now need to start looking at this thing called data analysis. And I'll give you a demo shortly of how this works in ChatGPT, where when you ask your prompt, if it thinks it falls into this category, then instead of it giving you an answer, it will write the code and then execute the code to give you the correct answer. And then I'm just going to wrap this up with this idea of customs. So custom, there's a lot of different names. People call them GTPs. Personally, I call them doppelgangers. This is where we want to wrap up the idea of some information, and we want to wrap it up with a personality, a bit of context, and then I can just talk to that thing about that subject, giving it a bit of a narrower scope. And that's what it means by custom. Again, I'll show you an example of that in ChatGPT. So let's go to a demo. Okay, so here we are in ChatGPT. We're going to use 3.5 to start off with. 3.5 is the one that everyone will get if you access the free account. You can upgrade to ChatGPT 4, which gives you access to image generation, browser integration, and the data analysis stuff I spoke about, though it has a limited of 40 messages per 3 hours. And 3.5 is good for quite a lot of things. So let's start off with just asking, for those who aren't familiar with ChatGPT or these models, let's just start off with some simple stuff. So For example, I can say, what is the capital of the UK? Here it's London. Okay, give me 10 facts about London. And then it's starting to write, and I'm like, okay, cool, that's great. And the speed at which this is happening is very impressive with 3.5. It's very quick. Now, create a blog post based on those facts, but only the first 5. So what I'm saying is now generate this blog post, but only pull in the first 5. So it knows that ordering of the list of items. Okay, no, great. Now give me a tagline based on that blog post. Okay, now from this point here, all the way back up to here, this is our context window. Every time I send a message and a question about London, all this information is being sent back, this whole context window. Okay. Now, that's great, but what about for information? What if we're wanting to do like the data analysis thing I spoke about? What if I'm wanting to interrogate some environmental information? So let's jump into GTP4 so we can get that data analysis. And let's ask the question of what has been the average temp in London for the last 36 months? Now, what we're going to see here is it's now thinking. So it's kind of going, do I have this information in my kind of language base? Or is this something I have to go off to get from something else? And it's kind of come back and it's gone, okay, I can kind of come to some representation of this, which is great. And then I can say, okay, give me the raw values for the last 6 months. Okay, and then I can say return these results, and I can stop it halfway through because it knows the previous context. So when it runs again, it will have that, it'll know I was asking for 6 months before. Return these results in a CSV, right, in a CSV file. Now, what we're going to see happen now is it's going to think. Now, it knows it can't create a CSV file for language. So what it has to do is it has to write some code. So here it's writing the code to generate the CSV file in question. And then once it's wrote the code, it's going to execute that code and then provide me with the file to download. Okay, and I'm going to click this, and then, so that's what it then generated and gave me in a CSV file. Now, let's say, so that's great, so that's cool. And now let's say I want to investigate some information. I've got some information I want to actually conversate with. And I can attach files, I can attach images, all sorts of things. So here I'm going to get, here's a UN report on air quality. What is this? So that's going to give me an overview of what this report's about. And I'll be able to ask it follow-up questions. So I can say, give me, so let's just stop that. Give me the top 5 points in bullet list. Okay, I can continue on. I can have this conversation. I can chat. I can ask it to return stuff in a visual format. I can ask it to do it in a rap, in a poem. And again, we'll get to this in a later module. But as you can see, it's extracting information from that PDF. And that's great. And let's say I find this really valuable and interesting. What I can do then is then linking into the custom side is they have this concept called GTPs. And I can create a new GTP. And I can call it the UN report on air quality. If I could spell. And then I could upload the report. And I can give it some instructions. So I can say what this does, like what do I want this GTP to be? Like you are a report on air quality from the UN Environmental Programme. And off the back of that, I can then please answer questions in UK English, for example. And then I can test it. So I can have a little, I can have a chat to it. So I can say, tell me about what Europe is doing on air quality. Ooh. And it's going to go into that data, look for it, send it to the model, decipher it, and then basically give me this answer accordingly. And it's pulling out information from the report that I'm aware of. I've seen these sections. Then I can create this. What I can do is I can publish it to the store so anyone can access it with a ChatGPT premium account. I can make it only available to me, or I can just create it with a link. And now I can share this GTP. And that means that anyone who, if I go to view now, anyone who wants to add it, I can give them that link. And then where they would normally just chat to GTP, instead they can now have this UN report on air quality in their feed and they can have a conversation with that data. I hope you enjoyed this module. The next module will follow on generating text. Thank you. Good morning, my name is Lee Mallon and this is Module 5 of the Humanity AI course for environmental educators. And in this course, we're going to look at generating text. Now, what I mean by generating text is the creation of textual output, and we'll kind of expand on what that means. But it all kind of stems from using these generative AI language models to feed in either knowledge or information or the desire to extract knowledge and information they already have embedded in them about their worldview. And we do this through this concept called prompting. Now, prompting is the idea of basically you could ask a question. So as we did in the previous module, what is the capital of England, of the UK? And then it gave us London, and then we can ask it some facts about London. When you prompt, there is quite a lot of, I wouldn't say parameters because it's kind of built into the language. There's a lot of flexibility in how you can ask questions. So you can say, give me 10 facts about London, but you can also say, give me 10 facts about London in a bullet point list. Give me 10 facts about London where it's just the fact and a description or a fact and a joke. You can add all this variation of language. You can say, only phrase this in UK English. Words that are ends in the letter E don't include, for example. There is a massive kind of art into prompting. The best thing to think about it is if you are trying to extract information from another person, you can just keep iterating. You can keep going to depths in that communication pattern. And that kind of leads on to like tonality and style. So you have the ability through prompts to ask for things in a certain way. So for example, I can say, this is a blog post for this topic. And then because it knows blog post, it will infer an element of tonality, of language, of length. Whereas if I said this is an executive summary for a shareholder report, again, it's going to adjust accordingly. If I said that this is to explain a concept to a 5-year-old, again, it's going to adjust the language and style accordingly. Write this in the language of Eminem or of Shakespeare, for example. I mentioned it before about this idea of hallucinations. And for this generative text kind of module, I kind of want us to forget about it in a way, because if you add the human intervention step afterwards, then hallucinations aren't really a problem. They're just an enforcer for you to verify the information, which then makes you read it, which is a good thing overall. Hallucinations are because the model is incentivized, is rewarded to give you something back. And that will have accuracies. But actually, hallucinations or not, we have to really remember that all information has a bias of something. So I've noticed this particularly with image generation. There tends to be a bias leading towards certain demographics of people, of belief systems, of English as a language. These are all things that you just have to bear in mind that this is built in. Now, that being said, it is still a powerful and amazing tool. And as the models mature and as they grow and as more countries release models, we'll start to get a wider worldview from around the globe. Now, if we're generating text, I showed examples before where we generated the blog and then we turned that into bullet point lists and things like that. But that's not all. There are a magnitude of form factors we can generate. And this is only some of them here. And we'll kind of go into this with a demo in a second. But the key here is to remember that if you can create it, then there's a good chance the AI can also create it. And we'll call it the same thing. We'll be aware of what an impact statement, an impact assessment is, what instructions are, what a poem is, what a book is, what a press release is, etc. And when you're prompting, when you're trying to generate text, again, if it doesn't give you what you want, you don't have to go back to the beginning. You haven't got to start again. It is an iterative conversation, the same way that is if you meet someone for the first time and you're trying to learn about them, you don't just say, tell me your life story. You ask them one question, they respond, they give you, you ask again, and you delve into the depths of that person's kind of background. So, but, a demo is always a better example. So let's do that. Okay, so here we are with our ChatGPT and our air quality, but let's just go back to 3.5 for a second. So let's think about the form factors that I kind of demonstrated. So we talked about a blog post. So let's pick a topic. So let's say, create me a blog post on rising sea levels. Now, it's going to be quite kind of generic, quite verbose in its language. And with 3.5, it generates quite quick. So, okay, so there's our blog post. That's great. Now, the next on our form factors list that was on the presentation was Q&A. So from this blog, can you create me a list of questions for my FAQ section on this topic? Okay, so now I've got my Q&A, that's great. Next one is interview questions. Okay, so now I can say I am interviewing someone for a job in this area. What questions could I ask them about this topic? Give me 5 short in a bullet point list. Perfect. Next up, we had a social media post. Okay. So now I'm going to jump kind of back on myself and say, turn the blog post you generated into a LinkedIn article. Now, by stipulating LinkedIn, it's then also going to look at how LinkedIn stuff is articulated, how it's structured. Next up we have is quiz sheet. Okay, so create a quiz on this topic. 10 questions. So you can see the variety of which we can generate these things. We want a script. Great, I have an idea for a video on this. Can you create me a script? So now it's broke down the narration, the clips. Now I can evolve that script, but I could also say, can you create me a script as to why rising sea levels may be a good idea? And then again, it's going to take that into account accordingly. And I can go on, I can say, intro to a newsletter on this topic. The description for the back of a book. A PR release. It goes on and on and on. So you can see there's a massive amount of text generation we can do. And again, like I said, all this is being fed into that context window. It's going to be slightly, once we go over that 8,000 tokens, it's probably going to get slightly condensed. But you can see the generation aspect. We'll delve into this a bit more in the interactive module, but I want to show it's not just textual text that we can generate. We have the flexibility to generate other things, such as like Excel formulas, data tables. Next up, the next module we have is around creating images. Hope you enjoy. Good morning and welcome to the Humanity course for environmental educators on AI. My name is Lee Mallon. I'll be your guide, your tour through this course and module. And today we are looking at images and how we can use artificial intelligence to create and generate images. First up, I want to talk about how we're moving to, I think, a world where a lot of imagery will not be real. All these images you can see on the background here were generated with artificial intelligence. And this opens up a massive concern around deepfakes. That's what a lot of the mainstream media has focused on recently. But it also opens up a lot of possibility for people who are not massively artistic to start to generate amazing, beautiful, engaging visuals like they've never been able to do before. And again, in this case of environmental education, we get to generate these most beautiful imagery to either inspire people or to some degree to invoke a fear or an emotional state for them to make more immediate action potentially. And how this works is by providing prompts. So there's a multitude of different things where you can give an image and it will take the image traits and then come up with another image. But on the whole, you're able to use a textual input to generate an image that looks very much like this one here by just saying something like create an image of a city of the future embracing renewable clean energy. Now, the images aren't perfect. There's different services that do different things, but it gets quite compelling depending on how and what platform you use. So for example, I showed you in the very introductory of this video, the City 2047 example that we created as a video. And this is some of the image stills. This is where describing cities around the world in their prosperous, clean, renewable energy future, and also a future around decay, and is something that you could, you would need a whole art team to create before, or you potentially wouldn't even be able to if you're someone just trying to advocate for change. But like anything, the best thing to do here is to show you how this works. I'm going to throw a few tools. Most of them are free or quite cost effective to utilize. Let's get into the demo. Okay, so here we are back in, we'll do ChatGPT first. And with ChatGPT 4, we have access to their platform called DALL-E. DALL-E is their image generation tool. And from that, we can create all sorts of images. So for example, I can say, give me an image of a city, actually let's pick a city, of London, picking on London, where grass has taken over because it is 30 years in the future. And then what's going to happen now is going to go off and it's going to generate the image. Now, compared to the text generation we saw with ChatGPT 3.5 and ChatGPT 4, image generation does run a lot slower. And therefore, you do get a lot less kind of back and forth because of the speed for generation. Now, we see some other tools that execute it a little bit differently, which kind of, well, we'll save that for a second. So here we can see, the iconic London, the Big Ben, the Wheel, House of Parliament, and as you can see, it's been overrun by greenery. Now, I can take that image and I can say, can you create this in landscape ratio? And we can invoke a style and make the style more comic book. Now, again, this kind of also relates to if you're going to be creating imagery, you can be creating artwork to promote your cause, focus on the audience. If your audience is people who are really interested in comic books, then this gives you the ability to appeal to their familiar environment. Okay, so now you get the same thing, but in a more cartoonistic style. Now, the one great thing actually about DALL-E is I can jump between text and imagery quite well. So previously, we did a script for a video. So here I can say, give me a script for a video showing how London could evolve to a green, actually let's not do that because we've already done that, to be underwater in 50 years. So now it's going to generate me my script off the back of it. Okay, so I'm just going to stop it there. So our opening shot is this. So now I'm going to say, cool. So for the opening shot, can you give me the image prompt to create this? Now, the reason I ask for that is because it understands what an image prompt is and it's going to go quite verbose in its detailing. Sometimes it will then create the image. Okay, so now we're getting the prompt. And what's great about this is I can take that prompt and maybe I don't want the London Eye Big Ben in the shot. Maybe I just want Big Ben and I can adapt that prompt accordingly. So now I can say, create an image from that prompt, but remove Big Ben. Now, similar to the text generation, image generation is the same. If you ask it for a futuristic view of London, and then you ask it again, them two images could be completely different from the first time. The more specific you can get with the prompt, the more consistency you can kind of get in the long term. this is a great image. It's kind of done what we wanted to. But as you can see, and this is where we get into this hallucination conversation again, where it says without Big Ben, but as we can blatantly see, Big Ben is right here. But, we can either iterate on the prompt, we can try and get it to cut out, or we could just go manual and just cut the image right there accordingly. Now, this could also come down to training material. This is what it knows of London, it knows of Big Ben, etc. Now, there's other tools out there that generate images as well. One particular tool is a tool called Midjourney. Now, Midjourney is, there we go. So Midjourney is all it does is image generation, does no text generation, but it has, in my opinion, and many's, a more interesting set of training data, quite futuristic, quite kind of techno, but it means you can create some interesting things. Now, Midjourney prior you used to have to use this other tool called Discord to be able to generate images. They're slowly moving it into their own website. If you're not familiar with Discord, it's probably worth just waiting. If it's not for you, I personally have an alpha version just because I've generated so many pictures, but I think they're going to slowly roll this out over the next few months. Now I can again take the same thing, so I could go back into ChatGPT and grab that prompt out, and in here I can just drop that prompt. I then also have some settings, so I can say if I want it landscape, square, if I want to use different versions of the model, how stylized I want it to be, how weird, what variety, and how quick should it run. And then we're just going to press go. And then that's going to create. Now, the one great thing about Midjourney is it will create 4 different images of the same prompt with slightly different variations. And as you can see now, unlike DALL-E, which basically ran to the very end at 35%, we start to see a progressive loading of each image to start getting an idea. Okay, I kind of like that, I kind of like that, or I don't like any of them. I'm going to start thinking about re-engineering my prompt to be more suited to what I'm after. I'm going to keep this running in real time and just sitting in awkward silence because I think it's important to understand the duration it takes for this image generation. Okay, so there we go. As you can see, that's a bit slow. Now, this also could be because America's woken up, which does seem to make it a bit slower. So here's my image for the first one, the second one, the third one, and the fourth one. And as you can see, some of them have basically followed through and not obviously shown Big Ben, which is great. Now, within these, so we can do the same again. We can iterate, we can change, we can go. But we can also vary them. So we can zoom out, we can vary them subtly or strongly. We can upscale them so we can make them bigger resolution if we decide that's what we want to go for. We can change we can use this as a base image. So for example, I can use this as a base image and say, do the same for New York. And it will therefore take the styling and the aesthetics to match to something in New York. The image generation thing is very much a play. You get to experiment. You get to really start to imagine things as you create them. Ability to turn your words, your language into something visual, I find even as a brainstorming activity, I find that it's quite eye-opening what it generates sometimes, and just makes me rethink what I was trying to articulate sometimes. Okay, so there we go. Now we've got our New York and our variants of that in the same style, which is very cool. The one great thing about Midjourneys, it is a community, it is a collaborative tool. So if I go into Explore, I can see all different images other people have made, and most importantly, I can see the prompts that they've used to generate them. So this can basically be a great source of inspiration to start figuring out how you can hone in your language for prompting, and also what people have done to really get that nice nuance. So like, for example, on some of these, let's find. So here you've got things like this, ultra realistic. You've got these little parameters that really kind of hone in on the style, the parameter of it, of what it is. Like, this is commercial photography, this is 4K, this is raw, it's got lighting. So that was generating images. The next module is all around sound and speech. Thank you. Have a nice day. Good morning. My name is Liam Allen, and this is the Environmental Education course for AI. Today we're going to be talking or listening into sound. Now, sound for me is just this most amazing form factor. I love listening to podcasts, I love music, and sometimes I am able to absorb information much better through audio than I would through reading it, and especially the speed of which I can then process it. But sound is a multitude of different things. First of all, we have speech, we have music, we have like sound effects, transcription or voice to text or whatever it may be, and obviously translation. Now, I want to break these things down, and to be honest, the main way of demoing this is through demos to show you what it's all about. Sound has a very strong need within environmental education because it gives you the ability to connect with the audience through, images give you visual, text gives you textual, and sound just, for many people, emotes emotion because it's the sound of narration, it's the sound of an animal, of the wave, of the ocean, just that kind of all-encompassing feeling around the world. This is what really makes the videos I've created, I think, makes people move, is when there's audio over the top, be it speech, be it music. But the other kind of more technical benefit of this is, if I am able to digitize my own voice, or a voice that I think is going to connect with my audience, then I can tweak the language, not the like English, French, German language. I can tweak the words for that particular audience in a textual sense, and then just generate the audio. I haven't got to get someone to come in and re-record it. Their voice might have changed slightly day to day, sore throat, that type of stuff. I can add cultural references in with music. I can make things more jungle or more urban because the sounds of a street, of the cars of people hustle bustle in the city, versus that of a cricket or of a fish that's in the kind of the Amazon. And all this just amounts to much better storytelling, to really engage more audience, to compete with the directors creating car and jewelry ads, or the TikTokers, or whatever they may be. And once we kind of pull all this together, the dynamicness, the fact that we can then translate this into 50 languages, the fact that we can then intersperse different imagery in that is related to different cultures and output and share that message across the world is, to me, the most powerful thing. But the best thing to do is to show you how this all works. So first up is speech. And for this, we're going to use a tool called 11 Labs. So 11 Labs, great tool, great team. And what it is a way for us to synthesize speech into different voices. So what I can do here is I can basically, so if I log in, you get some free credits on the free account, or you can purchase. You can add your own custom voice. You can read some text, and then it will create a digital version of how you sound. But you can also pick from a multitude of different voices. So, for example, this is Joshua, the British reporter for the news.
Allow the world to live as it chooses, and allow yourself to live as you choose.
And this is Dorothy. This might sound familiar from one of the previous modules.
Ideas are the beginning points of all fortunes.
The fox has many tricks. The hedgehog has but one, but that is the best of all.
The greatest part of our happiness depends on our dispositions, not our circumstances.
And as you can see here, there's a multitude of different voices from different ethnicities, from different tonalities, and different kind of use cases, like even things like video games.
Our distrust is very expensive.
I feel like he's like the radio 94.7 type of thing. So now what I can do here is I can now just write some text. Now let's keep it into our kind of zone and say, write me a poem about rising sea levels. So I've just dropped into ChatGPT, you can't see, to get this poem. I'm just going to grab the first 3 paragraphs and drop back into here. And I'm just going to paste them in. And for this voice, we're going to use, I love Oscar and Wayne.
Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity.
So we're going to now generate this. And what happens is, as you can see here, I'm using 436 tokens.
Upon the shore, where waves once danced, now creeps a tide, a rising trance. The ocean's breath, a steady swell, whispers tales no one can tell.
So that took 436 tokens. I had 10,000 remaining. Now, the great thing is I have this, but I can also then just instantly change it into Emily. And it's quite fast.
Upon the shore where waves once danced, now creeps a tide, a rising trance. The ocean's breath, a steady swell, whispers tales no one can tell. Where seagulls soared and children played, the waters rise, their path unswayed. With every inch, a silent plea, as coastlines yield to destiny.
Oh, that got me. And then within that, I can do some kind of variations around the stability of the voice, the clarity, etc. So from that voice, I can then take it, download it, embed it in my podcast, in my video, in whatever it may be. And if I want to regenerate it, I just have to keep the text, and then I can just regenerate according to it. So that's speech. And now I kind of want to talk about music. Currently, in March 2024, music in AI space is about to hit the mainstream. There's been some amazing new products that have come out, of which I'm going to kind of share with you now, and that are producing some quite impressive outputs. So let's do that. Okay, so first up, this one's a bit more technical, but I want to kind of ease in and show you the progression that's happened even over only the last kind of few months. So Music Gen, this is a tool that I've used many times. It's hosted on a thing of Hugging Face, which is a very, it's basically like the place where AI community host their models, and you can interact with that community. And what I can do is I can just describe some music. So I can say the intro to a movie, or intro to a 1990s action movie, for example. Now, because this is on Hugging Face, it can be slow. It can be slow to kind of generate it. It'll generate like a 15-second clip. So definitely sounds very 90s action movie. So that's great for some sound effects, and that's why I've been using that for quite a lot of repeat. I can just press and download that file and embed it inside of my video. Or whatever. Okay, so now I'm going to jump across to another product called Suno, which is great for song generation. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take in ChatGPT our poem. I'm going to say, turn that poem into a rap song. Okay, so it's done that. Let's now drop this into here. So here is, so we're on custom mode. We're going to enter our lyrics. Let's just get rid of the definitions for each section. Okay, so that's our lyrics, and we want to give a style to it. So let's say our style is early 2000 rap, like, let's go Eminem. Sea Rise Rap, let's call it. And let's create that as well. Okay, so let's listen to the first part of our song.
Listen up, let me paint a scene. Where the waves once danced, now it's just a dream. Rising tides, creeping high. Whispers in the wind, you hear them cry. Used to be ashore, where we playing home. Now it's underwater, before we home. Ignore the signs, nature's plea. Now the coastline vanished from all the sea. Rising sea levels, can't you see the signs, man?
To be fair, it's not as bad as quite a lot of the music nowadays. So as you can see, it's created that, and then here's a different variation of it as well.
Let me paint a scene. Where the waves once danced, now it's just a dream. Rising tides, creeping high. Whispers in the wind, can you hear that cry? Used to be ashore, when we played that role. Now it's underwater, the watery home. Ignore the signs, nature's plea.
It's pretty good. So now if we drop back to also I'm going to take out the stability bit because it's not working. So as you can see there, it shows how music and how creative this AI can be in generating something that is, it might not be the best, but I guarantee you it's better than what most environmental education programs and advocacy is using now. I'm sure if you started all pushing out raps and funky AI images around your cause, it would be a shock to the system in a positive way. So for sound effects, I don't actually have a tool that I found that actually is amazing, but I think you may be watching this video in a few weeks' time from its release, and I know of like 3 that are coming out very soon. So I put it in here purely to explain that sound effects are coming. The ability to be like, oh, the door creaked, the glass was dropped, to be able to pull in all these different kind of nuanced sound effects is going to be something that we'll be able to do very, very quickly. Now, transcription is something people may be a bit more familiar with regards to, reading in something and then getting the text kind of out, the classic dictation thing. And the world of AI is no different with the area of transcription. I personally love being able to go for a walk and talk and just kind of share some thoughts. Or when I wrote my book, I dictated quite a lot of the book verbally, and then ran it through a transcription service. There is now an amazing transcription service model which has been released for free, which I would like to show you, just because it starts to, again, offer up another way for if you're someone who is not great at writing blogs, if you're someone who doesn't know how to generate images and how you want to articulate and promote your cause, but you love talking about it. If you've given talks, then you can take the audio from that and turn it into something interesting. Now, there is a tool. So there's a tool on Mac, and it's also on Windows. This one's called Mac Whisper. And what it is, it's based on the Whisper model. So OpenAI is a company in the space, and they've released open source a thing called the Whisper model. And the Whisper model is just a really, really advanced AI model for understanding speech and turning it into text. So I can basically give this app, I can give it audio recordings, I can have it listen to Zoom calls and things, and then just dictate the output of that meeting. I can get it to transcribe podcasts, or these videos that I'm recording now will be placed on a web page with an article and description underneath, because I will have taken this video, put it through Mac Whisper, it will have extracted the audio, and then it will turn it into the text, and then I will have got it to then turn that text into a narration kind of blog for the page that supplements this. And I just want to kind of show the speed of how it operates, because it runs locally on your machine. It doesn't send anything to the cloud. So fingers crossed this will work. So I'm just going to say hello, my name is Lee, and I'm recording a video here right now for my Humanity mini course for environmental educators on how to use AI to better storytell and get a handle of these AI tools. Now, as you can see, I talked quite quickly, and if I transcribe that, now it was obviously only a 15-second audio file, but what we'll start to see now is it now starts to transcribe it. And as you can see, it's very quick. Now I can then take that text, drop it into something like ChatGPT, and then summarize it accordingly if obviously it was quite extensive. Personally, if I do something, record say 20 minutes of audio, it normally takes about 10 minutes for it to do the transcription. And then finally in this space, I want to kind of talk about translation. Translation is where a lot of audio AI has been making its kind of mark on the world. You'll have noticed if you go to some YouTube channels, then there's dubbing in different languages. That's typically done by voice actors. But things like 11 Labs, which we showed you for the voice transcription, they also have a dubbing service. Let me just share that a second. Like here, where you can basically say, this is in English, and I would like it to translate to French, for example. And it will basically convert it to a different language whilst trying to preserve the unique characteristics in the person's original voice. This is something that's been rolled out across Spotify as well and some of their podcasts. And further kind of throws into the mix this idea of being able to very much turn your content into something that's not just from your native tongue. If you natively speak English, you might want, but actually the work you're doing is in Quebec, then maybe you want it to turn to French, but you don't speak French. You have to hire someone, get to translate, you make an amend, they have to go again. But actually with this tool, you can create a dub version in that different language. Now, it's not going to be 100% perfect on day one, but it's something that means getting your message out there better. So that is everything around audio and speech and voice. Next up, we kind of pull all this stuff together in the next module and we construct some videos. Until module 8, have a nice day. Good morning, my name is Lee Mallon, and this is the Humanity course for environmental educators to embrace artificial intelligence for content creation and course. Today's video is all about creating videos. And not just creating videos, we're going to pull together all the different aspects of the previous modules, from writing scripts to generating images to audio and music. I'm going to put them all together into the final output because video is a compelling thing. It hits the visuals for people who are visual learners. It hits the audible. It is a consuming device that can go toe to toe with the attention of films, of advertisements from big brands, but you as an individual looking to promote your cause can create now, with the power of AI, create something that can rival what they have been able to create before. So let's dive in. To do this, we have to basically split this project into 5 things. We need to generate a script, we need to create some images, which we're then going to turn into videos. Then we're going to put the videos and the audio together on a timeline, and that's going to give us our video. But let's not waste any time and let's dive straight into the demo. So first up, we're going to go with good old ChatGPT. We're going to use this to generate our script, but we're going to do it from the original GTP that we created, which we uploaded on air quality. So this is going to be a video about air quality. Now, this is a 60-page report, and I can imagine a 1-minute video would be much more appealing and engaging to the masses. So create a script for a 1-minute video about this report. Make it inspiring and engaging to a wide audience. Now you can see I'm kind of purposely made some spell mistakes just to further cement you don't need to be exact with this stuff. It can infer, it knows what I'm trying to say. Now it's going to write out this script, and what we're going to do off the back of this now is we're going to then communicate back with the GTP, and we're going to say, right, that's cool. We now need the narration, and we now need the image prompts for the different cutscenes for the videos. So okay, so we're just going to ask for the narration. I've said in a block of text, and what I mean by that is it will probably, before it would just give you the sections, and we don't want to have narrator says, for example. Okay, so we're just going to copy that, and then we're going to jump over to 11 Labs. It's here, and we're going to pick, I do like Oscar. I'm going to pick Oscar, and we're going to drop this script into there. We're going to click generate, and that's going to generate the audio file for our video narration.
In a world where the air we breathe defines the health of our very existence, actions speak louder than words. Across the globe, nations are taking bold steps, from the bustling streets of our cities to the serene landscapes of our countryside. Cleaner production methods, stringent vehicle emissions standards, and innovative waste management techniques are paving the way towards a future where clean air is a birthright, not a privilege. But it's not just about policies and regulations. It's about communities coming together, about each one of us taking action in our daily lives. From choosing sustainable transport to advocating for green spaces, we are all architects of our future. The fusion of technology and collective will is leading us to breathe easier, reducing the burden of disease and creating cities that are livable and lovable. Join the movement for clean air. Together, we can transform our world, ensuring a healthier planet for future generations. Because every breath we take is a step towards a brighter, cleaner tomorrow.
Okay.
The United Nations Environment Programme reminds us, the air we share knows no boundaries. It's time to act for our planet, for our air, for us. Take action today. Breathe life into our future.
Okay, so that's our audio. That's about 90 seconds. So we're just going to grab that. We're then going to drop back into ChatGPT, because our next step is, now we have the narration. We now need, give me some image prompts for each scene of the script. So it's now going to basically go through this script and see where I've put this, for example, and when I've said cut to this and cut to this. and it's now going to generate the prompt accordingly. Okay, so I'm just going to say, just give me the prompt. And it knows what Midjourney is. So if we stipulate Midjourney as the image prompt creator, then we'll add some tendencies to it. Okay, so then we're just going to grab our first prompt. Then I'm just going to jump over to Midjourney. I'm just going to drop this in here and press create. Okay, so that's going to start generating these images. Now, once we have the images, we then need to turn them into video clips. And to do that, we have to use another tool. And this tool is a tool called Runway. So Runway is a video editing tool. If we drop to here. So this is Runway. And you can do things like convert video to a video, text to video, image to image, generative audio, as we've seen elsewhere, remove backgrounds, these types of things. There's lots of different aspects. But the thing it became very known for, and it is very, very good, is its ability to turn text or images into video. Now, if you ask it to use a description, it's going to use its own image engine for the generation. And personally, Midjourney, I feel, is better. That's their focus. It's better for image generation. So I like to create my images in Midjourney and then feed them into Runway to turn them into videos. Okay, so here we are now into Midjourney, and we have our images. So let's take this image as our first one. Now what we can do is we can drop this into the Runway tool. Let's drop the image in. So it's now going to upload that image to Runway. What we can do is we can add some more description to the scene if we want, but there's also some quite cool settings. The general settings don't really play around. The camera one is the main one. So here what we can do is we can basically say when this gets rendered, we want the camera to move like left and right, like this. Do we want it to pan? Do we want it to roll, maybe for a flying of some sort? We want to go up and down for climbing up a building, for example, and tilt and zoom, obviously. Quite self-explanatory. But then they have this idea called a motion brush. And a motion brush is the ability to highlight areas and select things that we may want to move. So here I can select this vehicle. So I can just brush this vehicle for brush one. So this one here. I can say I want him to move horizontally this way and vertically kind of down because he's coming towards me. And I'm just going to keep it like that for this input. I'm just going to make it quite straightforward. And then we press generate. And then what's going to happen, it's going to generate 4 seconds of video as a clip that we can then embed into our video timeline. Okay, so now that's now finished. And now if we press play, what we'll see is the video camera angle move, and we'll see the car change. Now, this becomes very trial and error with a lot of motion in the scene. As you can see, things are bending and swaying. Just bear with it at the moment, because after this demo, I'm going to show you something which is going to be coming out in the next few months that will take this to a whole another level. So learning these skills now will hold you in good stead for the coming months. So now that's created that video for us. And we can do this over and over. We generate an image, we create that, we create the narration. And then what we can do inside of Runway, it actually has its own video editor. And any of the assets that I've created, we have accessible in here. So what I can do is I can drop in my audio, for example, just onto the timeline. It'll upload it to my assets. Press space to press play.
In a world where the air we breathe defines the health of our very existence.
And then that'll play out as you'd expect, like a normal video editor. But what I can do is, these are the videos that have been generated. So here's the video here that we just did, and I can drag this onto the timeline. And it's going to drop it in here. I can then make it fit the ratio, and then I can press play.
In a world where the air we breathe defines the health of our very existence, actions speak louder than words.
Now, I can do this over and over and over and over again. I'm just going to pick another video just to show. So this is a scene from the video we did for Thames River. So
existence.
You see how it then
defines the health of our very existence. Actions speak louder than words.
But you see how it was a cutscene like this. But the one good thing with Runway is it does have some transitional aspects. So I can, for example, run this onto another layer. I can, through the effects, the motion effects, I can motion it in with a fade for a second. And then I can get a nice fluid transition.
The health of our very existence. Actions speak
like this. And through going over and over and over, I can create a 1.5 minute video that is resembling the City 2047 video that I showed at the start. And then once you've created your video, you can then export it and download it and share with others. And you don't have to use Runway as your video editor tool. If you prefer to use iMovie, or if you're more afraid with some more advanced video editing tools, you can use all of these services just to generate the assets that you can then embed within. Now, I mentioned to you that looking at some of the video clips, like it was 4 seconds, it wasn't the best when it was trying to morph the car, and not to worry too much about it. And that's because there's this thing called Sora that's coming out very soon. Sora is a text-to-video engine from OpenAI, but it's built a bit differently than these other ones. And you could argue to some degree, Sora is the beginnings of the idea of simulating our world to be able to produce point-in-time representations of it, in this case through video. The only way for me to really explain it to you is to show you some examples. So if you go to OpenAI, if you just Google, there'll be a link on this page. If you just Google Sora OpenAI, you'll get taken to this page. This is not something that's out yet because it opens up a lot of ethical concerns because the things are so realistic. But all the videos on this page are generated the same way that we've just generated the stuff today for the video. And you can start to understand how powerful this will become. So this was the first video they released. So this is a lady walking through, and there's the prompt. A stylish woman walks down a Tokyo street filled with warm glowing neon and animated signage. She's wearing a black leather jacket, a long red dress, and black boots. And then the carries black purse. She wears sunglasses, red lipstick, walks confidently and casually. The street is damp and reflective, creating a mirror effect of the colourful lights. Many pedestrians walk around. Now, what's fascinating about this is there's some weird nuances. It's not perfect by any means, but this was able to generate 1 minute of video from that source reference. And what's amazing is if we pause it here, we even see in the sunglasses a slight reflection of what is happening outside. Now, this to me is very compelling, and this has been further cemented with more of these demos like this. Again, fully 100% AI generated based on just the prompt. This again is the same. You see how powerful video is going to become when it's generative in this format. So that's Sora. That's how you construct videos using 11 Labs for audio, using Runway ML for the timeline, using Midjourney for images, and ChatGPT for the script. You could also add in a music track by using things like MusicGen or Summer to bring together the full picture. 11 Labs also is releasing sound effect library very soon for videos. The next module, module 9, is where we get interactive and we turn our text into things a little bit more interesting. So until next time. Good morning, my name is Lee Mallon, and this is the Humanity course for environmental educators to understand AI. And today is the 9th module where we're going to talk all about making things interactive. Now, what do I mean by making things interactive? And so I ask you, can you code? And if the answer is no, or I'm not sure, or something along the lines, don't worry about it, because going interactive is no longer a requirement to be someone who can code, because what we can do is we can take natural language interfaces, be it through typing or voice, and we can turn that into executable code that can create digital experiences. And I'm going to show you the tools and potentially also create some things. And then it's just a case of trial and error, unfortunately. It's learning. It's basically finding your feet and understanding if this code doesn't work, I can just iterate. I can have this conversation with what becomes this AI assistant for you to build something interesting and engaging. So now it's time for a demo. So I thought I'd start this with some data. And on the theme of air quality, this is the UK government website, publicly accessible information on emissions of air pollutants. And they very kindly will give you trends in sulfur dioxide, nitrates, and ammonia emissions. And they do this in a CSV format file, which looks a bit like this. Okay? And that's great and helpful, but it's not the most engaging or interesting. But what we can do is we can jump over to our favorite tool, ChatGPT, and we can have a conversation with this data. So I'm just going to drop that CSV file into the conversation thread and say, this is a CSV file of air pollutant in the UK. And it's going to basically upload the file. It's going to analyze the file, as we can see here. And if we watch what it's doing, it's actually opening it in CSV format, and it's going to pull out the headings, and then it's going to pull out some of the values. Now, what we're going to see here is it's noticed the file actually has loaded GUMP at the top, which is not standard in a CSV file format. So potentially it's going to moan. There we go. There was an error generated response. So it's going to regenerate that just to see what it does again. All right, it's going to do the same thing again. Look. Here's the actual data starts after some header information. So you see it's already learned, it knows to skip the initial rows to get the data. Display the first few rows with the actual data. And now it's running again. So now it's getting the levels. It's renaming the columns because it wants to add some description to it based on what it's got in the file. And now we've got a nice little error because it can't work out with the introduction. So it's going to go again. And if you span this, well, the good thing is you can start to iteratively learn what all these different bits are. See, it's going to try and skip 13 rows this time. Now we get the answer from the results. So now it understands the CSV. And that was all itself doing that correction on its own behalf. We didn't have to prompt it. And if it did error, we could say, like, what was the error? And then maybe we could have assisted accordingly. So here's a snapshot of the data. So my first instinct is to look at ammonia and go, NAA, not a number. What's that error for? But then actually looking at the raw data, there was no reporting or logging of that value until 1980. Okay, so now we have this data. I want to do something a bit more interesting with it. So we can write a blog post, we can do all these things, but if we want to go interactive, we want to turn it into something different. So create a graph of years against PM10, for example. So now it's going to generate the code to write the graph that's going to create and there we go, it's generated the graph. I can then download that, embed it into something. I could take the script and give it to someone if I wish it to be animated, or I could do an aspect of this myself. So then I could say, create me a web page of this graph that I can interact with. So now I've asked it something a bit more complicated, and now it's going to break down the different aspects of the project. Again, let's expand what it's doing. Okay, so now we should be able to download this file. Okay, so now this is the file it generated. And this is a graph with all of these points on. I can hover over, I can interact with, I can zoom in. If I look under the hood, this is the code that it generated, and it created and pulled in this library and this tool to generate out this graph. So you start to see that it just requires a desire to experiment and to play around with. And this is very much more near the advanced side of things. Hopefully that should inspire people to start thinking, okay, not only can I grab the data that I'm collecting on rivers or sewerage or air quality or climate change, I can then inspect them, I can gain insight, I can write content, and maybe even build some interactive graphs or some web sites themselves. The next module is all about what's coming next. What is the future of AI for environmental educators? So until next time, have a lovely day. Good morning, my name is Lee Mallon, and this is the very last module for the Humanity course on AI for environmental educators. In this program, we have looked at such an array of different areas, and I just wanted to recap it in the final and also give you a glimpse into what is coming next in this world of AI that you may want to be aware of. So through the modules, we basically understood how important framing the world was, how important storytelling is, and how we can use AI to, as domain experts, create content like you've never been able to create content before and be very much in the driving wheel of that generation. And to do that, we went through a bit of fundamentals of AI and understand some of the buzzwords and some of the terminology that's coming out. And then we got into the nitty-gritty where we were able to firstly talk to the information that we had by uploading reports, by taking snapshots of information, by using the general knowledge that these language models have within them. We can have a conversation and ask questions, we can iterate on that, but we just have to be wary of things like the context window, the ethics of using this information, and how we go about using imagery and all that type of stuff. From that, we were then able to generate content across a myriad of form factors, from blog posts to script writing to Q&As to quizzes, and be able to change the language based on style and tone. So you could be speaking to someone, a post sound like Winston Churchill, or trying to explain quantum mechanics to a 5-year-old. Then moving on to visuals with images, one of my favorites, where we pulled in DALL-E and Midjourney to generate these amazing images from simple text prompts, and be able to pull in, again, the power of AI to say, this is what I want to do. Can you extrapolate this prompt to make it more defined so I can get a better output? And then sound. Producing a synthesized voice, I think, makes this stuff so compelling, because not only can then you update the narrative, you can pull in live data, you can change the translation, you can pull in different languages. It becomes the most flexible kind of way to culturally communicate with people all around the world when it's in their native tongue. And we were able to pull all that stuff together and feed it into Runway, where we were able to generate a video which has images to the video clips and then the audio, and then potentially you could add music, and you can do all of that stuff for less than $10. If not, most of it is, there is free levels available. And then just to wrap it up, we went into interactivity, where kind of explained the next level of using these tools is how can you then upskill your ability to start building software tools, understanding a bit of the coding, and even create things that are, in the case we did, an interactive graph from some very static data we found on a UK website. So taking into account that this is all the stuff that's happening now in the industry and the market, what is coming next? What are the things that we need to be aware of? And for me, I think information insight is probably number one. These models being trained on data all the time, they're connecting to many different systems. Data is very much king. So if you are collecting samples, river samples, sewers, air quality, or you're documenting behavior of animals or of degradation of environments, that data is your USP. It's the thing that these models really need to understand, and that have that empirical evidence to back up the content that you create. The second one is natural language will win. For all of the weird nuances you'll find in these systems, these hallucinations for things that get generated, or because it doesn't quite get it right and you have to iterate, remember you're talking in your natural tongue to a computer. This stuff is the things we dreamt about when we were children, and it's here now, and it's only going to get better. Third is attention. Attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, but they're also, for good, valuable content, they are getting longer. We have 3-hour podcasts and we have 6-hour dance videos. Understanding where you want to fit your content in used to be, do I want to create a 3-hour podcast, or do I want to create a 6-second video? And you had to decide. You don't have to decide anymore, because you can create this 3-hour podcast if that's what you feel will get through to one part of your audience, and then you can extract as many 6-second videos from that content that you want, or you can then use that script to enforce a dance video or create a rap song that can be used for dance videos around rising sea levels, for example. And then for modalities, as you saw with the SOAR example, where you can see how video improvements going to happen over this next year and the quality, I think we're going to also see more modalities in the respect of how can we pull this stuff into like computer games? How can we pull this stuff into other tools? So as you're describing what you want, then we've seen this a bit already, where Microsoft suite of tools, you can dive into your data in Excel, you can generate documents in Word, but I think we'll go up another level where you'll be able to describe, as a game creator, I want to set this. I want to create a game whereby the character is demonstrating rising sea level. So every time you go up a level, the sea level rises, like a Tetris. And I think you'll be able to create that game with quite ease by the end of the year. And then it's only going to expand on other existing modalities, where we have things like narration for speech, but also your ability to communicate with the AI will become more natural, more passive for those who prefer that way of communicating. And then finally, which is a bit of a selfish plug, this idea of DKR, which is what my book is about, I think changes the game, because it basically shows that in the future, content will become a transportation model for you to get some feelings, evoke some emotion, or some information to another person. So it becomes more and more important to say, what data do I have? What is the narrative I want to get across to people? Because the form factor of how that's delivered, be it through VR goggles, through a connection into the brain, or through a display ad, is going to change dramatically as we progress with this technology. And for those who are interested, can get a complimentary copy of DKR by going to ml.com/DKR. Drop your email address in and then you'll get a PDF. Or if you prefer to read in paper, you can get one off Amazon or Kindle. And I'd like to just finish and say, well done for completing this course. I know it was short and we kind of focused on some key points, but the purpose of it was to inspire and showcase what was possible with this technology, and just to make people get over that barrier of fear about using it. And now it's time for you to create, for you to start generating some stuff with artificial intelligence, be it a blog post, be it a video, be it an audio track, whatever you feel will be of interest to your target audience. And when you do, please email your creations to ai@humanity.run. We'd love to see the things that you create, and love to share them with the wider community. Thank you so much for taking this course. My name has been Lee Mellon, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.